All right.
There we go.
That was great.
Now we have the man himself.
Yeah, who's this guy?
Oh, you're getting perfect light. Now you can see this, the bush hammering.
Okay.
Right. This is nice because the light's flat.
That's
As
perfect.
the light gets flatter and flatter, this really comes out.
So what's the bush hammer?
Well, they use what was called a crandle.
Okay.
And it had several pieces of steel. I think it's 6. I have one. And they bolted them together. They would sharpen the edge into a V, into a point, bolt them together, and then hold it up. And I think they hit it. Now, I'm not positive of that, but I can't see how you could swing it.
No, they hold it and hit it.
Held it and hit it with a heavy hammer.
Yeah.
And this is a
give it
lot
that.
of work. To
That's
do
a
this
ton of
on a utility building like a jail is amazing to me.
Right.
How they would ever take the time.
Right.
This was terribly expensive.
Yeah, the width of the blade gave it a guide to stay flat, so that's how they made the stones nice and flat like that.
Okay.
But a crandle, you don't see many crandle buildings, but the other place he did it was on the coins. And the other
Coins
place,
are the corners of the building.
corners of the building, and then what I did, I found these 2 huge blocks of stone, which are treasures. They are also all bush hammered.
Wow.
They have the same texture as this.
Wow. So how long would that have taken?
Oh,
Years.
Hours and hours
that
and
he
hours.
would be the expert to tell you that.
Well, we just happen to have an expert here. This is Fabio Bardini of Florentine Renaissance Masonry. And Fabio is going to teach us about how to repoint with traditional lime mortar. Thanks for being here, Fabio.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Great.
So what you're looking at here is a very old building, which it appears to have not ever been touched. So that's in pristine conditions. It hasn't been repointed. Luckily, it would have been done with Portland cement, which is not the ideal thing to do. And we're gonna go ahead and look at.
What's wrong with Portland cement?
Well, Portland cement is it's very stiff. It would trap water in the building versus, it's made to try to keep water out. It's waterproof, but it actually, when it shrinks, it allows water into the building, and then that water can't come back out.
Okay.
So you want to have a traditional lime mortar, which allows breathability. So moisture can come in, but it also will come back out. It wants to equalize with the exterior moisture level. So once it stops raining and the moisture level decreases in the air, all that moisture will come back out. So, and that's a healthy building.
Okay. Great. So I never want to use Portland cement.
Never want to use Portland cement on anything that's called a restoration mortar, unless it is lime putty and sand. That's all they ever had. It's been used for 10,000 years. It's performed extremely well. The Roman cement is 2,000-year-old and still doing great. This type of mortar in New England, about a couple hundred years it will last, so it outperforms Portland cement by far, and it doesn't damage your building.
So Fabio, in your opinion, is repointing something that the average homeowner might be able to do by themselves?
They can. It's tedious work. But once you get the hang of it, you certainly can. Yes.
Well, maybe you can show us how today.
All right. So, like for example, in this building here, which has never been repointed, although the walls are extremely thick compared to any other building, you can already see that there's some movement. For example, this stone here has kicked in, so it came out a little bit here and it kicked in a little bit there. So that means that the bedding mortar has washed out and it allowed the stone to move. Now these stones are very tight, so it hasn't moved that much, but you want to stop that as quickly as possible. The mortar joints here are worn out quite a bit. You can see it's going to be quite tedious to refill all these joints all the way to the depth that they are. There's not a whole lot of removal here because it's all gone. However, it's going to be quite tedious to fill these very tight joints all the way to the...
So that's maybe the first question. How deep do we have to repoint it?
Well, ideally you want to push it to meet the mortar in the back. Here, possibly, it might not be possible because it is just so deep. And but if you were to repoint about 3 to 4 inches, that would be sufficient to last another couple of hundred years.
Well, How about you go show us some of the materials that we might need in order to do this kind of work?
Okay, so the question is, what do you, you want to match the mortar in make, so that's a lime putty and sand, and that's okay. But also there's the color of the mortar, which varies depending on what additions they have used in the past. So I have found a larger joint, and I pulled out the bedding mortar, which is bright white. So this is a typical lime putty and sand mortar. So no colors added whatsoever. The only colors that you see are from organic growth, pollution, and tannins, or what has happened to it in the past couple hundred years. So that's the buildup of that kind of stuff. But the original mortar was bright white.
Okay, so we'll be.
Well, that's the bedding mortar. Now there's a on the surface mortar, whatever is surviving, like we have a bit over here. Just pull out a piece of this. Whoops, and I lost it. And you can see that obviously the exterior, it's all organic growth and lichens and lichens, or whatever you call it, or smog or what have you. But in the back, it's got somewhat of a pinkish color.
Okay.
So, and you can see that's different than that. So they used the bedding mortar to set the blocks with just the lime putty and sand, and perhaps this was done afterwards as a second thought, or they did the finish pointing with a colored mortar. So it is now, since this is a full repoint, you have a choice whether you want to go with with just a regular white mortar, or you want to color your mortar, and that's a decision that a homeowner.
So what's the homeowner going to decide today?
The homeowner is going to be really difficult to deal with on a bright white mortar. I despise bright white mortars. I see them used all over town. If I was the king, they wouldn't be used anywhere.
Great.
They separate the bricks and look really phony compared to.
So Fabio, is it possible to make it look weathered?
Right. We can add things to it to get the color to be whatever it pleases the homeowner.
The show can go on. All right. A question?
One question here. One observation. One reason I want lime mortar is this. There's several places on this building that are delicate.
Right.
And lime mortar will be softer. If this was Portland cement, I would really be frightened of losing that.
Right.
And there isn't any place on this building, thank goodness, where I don't have I have a big chip out of it, because you can imagine how hideous it would be.
Right. Right. Well, unfortunately, there's no mortar in there. It's stone on stone. So that's what's happening.
That's
so ideally here, if you were to cut this with a diamond blade and actually create a little cushion and then point it, then it might be a place where cutting out a little bit of the material would be.
And so if I'm understanding this correctly, because it was not presumably repointed sooner, it started to shift, and this is a great example of what's happening because it hasn't been taken care of beforehand.
Right. So this has found its way to meet the other stone, and now with the pressure, this corner is vulnerable. So actually cutting this and cutting some of the material, which is typically a no-no, it would be.
It would actually be good for the building.
Good for the building. Yes.
Okay, great. Well, I'm anxious to see the materials you use to do this kind of a job.
Great.
Let's go check it out.
Let's go to it.